Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Students at First Online. I'm Trevor Backoffner. I'm the Students and Families Pastor here at First Christian Church, and this week we are starting a two-part series on the greatest commandment. It is mentioned both in the Old and the New Testament, so we're going to start at the beginning and we're going to check out what this means in its Old Testament context. So we're going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 through 9 today. If you want to turn there, I'm going to be in the CSB version. So if you want to follow along word for word. This is when Moses has gathered the people together to hear the word of the law. They were supposed to do this every year, and he gathered them to read everything and to give them this large instruction and really the big reason behind why they have the law in the first place. So we're going to take this verse by verse. So let's check this out and read verse 4. Listen, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Now this seems a little confusing at first glance because we always think about God being more of a 3-in-1 because of the Trinity rather than just one. And what this actually means is the Lord our God, the Lord alone, which has quite a different connotation than the first. Moses is trying to say that God is the only God worth worshiping, that there's a plethora of other false gods out there that the Israelites have dabbled in from time to time, but God is the only one worthy of their praise and devotion. This reading that Moses has brought to the people is after God has liberated them from Egypt and their captivity. It is after leading them through the wilderness and providing for them with manna from above. God has done a lot for these people, and he's shown on a grand scale how much he loves them, how much he's caring for them, and holding to his side of the covenant. And Israel hadn't always held up their side. They had wandered quite a bit, hence why they had to wander through the wilderness for a long time. But Moses is trying to bring them back to the most important thing, that God is the only God worth worshiping. And out of that knowledge of God being the only person that they should devote their time and their energy in serving comes the greatest commandment. Let's read next verse. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. So here we are at the most important commandment, the greatest commandment, where Moses says, your knowledge of who God is as the one true God should motivate you to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Now, those are three pretty big encompassing areas, meaning the heart for the Hebrew was where your innermost desires were located. Like, what were your motivators? That's what the heart's talking about. So he's like, God needs to be your most, biggest motivator that you have. But also, your soul. Love him with all of your soul. That means the thoughts and the feelings, the personality. Everything about who we are is founded in the love we have of God. And also, we're supposed to love him with all of our strength, meaning the Israelites hadn't really tried to stay with their commitment to the covenant. They'd wandered a lot. And he's saying, hold on for dear life. Hold on to this covenant. Hold on to the love you have for God. Everything within you should be founded in the love you have for the one true God. And he goes on in verse 6 to say, these words I'm giving you today are to be in your heart. Or to say, the greatest commandment that I'm giving you should be one of the things that's your most common motivator. Even in the Psalms, Psalm 119:11 says, I've treasured your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. It was a way for the Israelites to remember all of why they made the covenant, remember how much God did for them, and also that he was the one who was worthy of worship. It's a cyclical thing. It's to motivate them and to continue to remind them of the commitment they have and the God they serve. And as a practice, going forward from this, he gives them some action steps. He says, hey, here's what you need to know. Here's one of the ways that you can grow in this area. Here's one of the ways, or a few ways for that matter, that you can exercise this love that you have, to remind yourself of this love. In verses 7 through 9, he says this, "Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your city gates." So there's some personal and corporate elements to these action steps that he calls the Israelites to. Number 1, he says, take these things, take this greatest commandment and tell it to your kids. Tell it to your family. Your family should be the first people that you talk about the greatest commandment with, saying, hey, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. Pass that to your kids, because you want your kids to have the same values as you do, which is fine. He says, teach them to your kids and use that as a growing piece and a talking piece throughout every aspect of your life. When you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, let that be motivated and centered on the love of God. When you are going out for a walk, when you're going out for an outing, let the way that you act and interact with other people be centered in your love for God, the one true God. When you sit down in your house, whether that is, around the kitchen table for a meal, whether that's, playing a game, whatever that is, let that be motivated and founded in the love you have for God, the one true God. So it's a heavy repetition for the people of Israel to understand, again, who they serve and how much they love him. So it's, again, he makes it into a family piece, so very personal, but also corporate, because, group of people. And then he also says this, bind them as a sign on your hand and on your forehead. What? Is Moses telling me to get tattoos? I don't know. What ended up happening is that the people of Israel developed these into very real practices where, they would put things on the doorposts of their house and on the city gates that said what's called the Shema. That was the word for the greatest commandment, Shema. But also they had these things called phylacteries. And phylacteries were little tiny pieces of parchment that they would roll up and place in a leather pouch. And then they would tie it around their forearm and around their forehead, like a little sweatband, but just with a little pouch right there. And they would wear those during their morning prayer time as a way to meditate on and remember the commitment to the covenant they had with God, that God was the one true God worthy of worship, and that they were to love him with every aspect of their being. That's what it was for the Israelites. That's what Moses is calling them to. His greatest commandment is to have a relationship with God. Have a relationship with the one true God. And that's what the people of Israel ended up doing. And while they wandered and they struggled, they really tried to have that relationship with God. So for us, maybe that looks like sharing the word of God and the love that we have for him with our siblings. Maybe it's sharing it with our parents, even initiating some of those conversations while we're walking along the road or sitting down in our house. Maybe it means just meditating on what God has for us, that he has loved us and that he is for us and that he wants every inch of our being to be centered in him, the one true God who is worthy of worship. Next week, we're going to talk about the New Testament context of the greatest commandment. We'll hear some words of Jesus and be in the Gospel of Mark. See you guys next week.